Dhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Bhadram Karnebhihi Shrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangaistuštuvagum Sastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitan Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddhishravaha Swasti nः Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu Om Shanti 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I hope that you have been listening. It looks like from the statistics that I see on YouTube, you have been following the Karika number 11, all the Karikas, which are explaining the very important mantra of number 7, na antah pragyam, na bahish pragyam, etc., which is itself the culmination of the Mandukya Upanishad, which itself is the culmination of Atma Vidya. So it's really just kind of like an essence of what's happening, what's our life is all about, what is the truth about it, where are we going, all those kinds of things. And so this Karika is a continuation and a commentary on it, clarified by the Mahatmas that make commentaries on it. This is what we are studying, and I hope that you've been following it. I thought it would be good to look at the concepts that we have been studying in terms of a topic to clarify it. So it's not a different topic, it's some similar, but it has a different way of looking at it. And the topic I thought we would ponder over in today's class is science versus philosophy. Science versus philosophy. So in order to examine the uniqueness, the essence of what Vedanta is talking about, it would be good to understand the distinction between science and philosophy. So now let us define what science as understood by everyone is. What is science? The science means a set of concepts and facts that are certain, truthful, and something that can be demonstrated, something that can be repeated, such as water boiling at a certain temperature, 100 degrees centigrade. This is science. If there is some variation of the exact temperature at which the water boils, then that can be explained by other factors like the height from the earth, atmosphere pressure, and so on. can be explained. Everything is scientific, can be repeated. That the human blood stays within a certain temperature range. Science. If there is some disease on it, then there is a fighting within the body that raises the temperature to a certain degree. To what degree it can reach, science. All of that is science. This is all science. Okay. Now let us look at philosophy. What is philosophy? So if we look at subjects like spirituality, religiosity, would you call that science, or would you call it something else? And we call it something else because it does not fulfill the conditions of science. It has some experience, but it also has some uncertainty. It may not be repeated. It doesn't have the proof. That's another way of looking at it. One thing that we should keep in mind, interestingly, in defining what philosophy is, that philosophy can also be called experience. And the reason I'm mentioning that is that suppose you look at the various religious schools of thought, whether it is the various strands in Hinduism, Shaivism, others, or you look at yoga, the yogic system, you look at Sankhya, you look at, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Jainism, all of those, and various strands of Hinduism also. What they contain is an inner experience. They all do that. It's interesting. I think I've mentioned this to you before. I had an interesting episode in my life. One of our relatives, close relative, when their daughter was growing up and she went to college, she's a Hindu, and all of us are in the family are Hindus. She started attending, she went to the church with some friend and was so attracted to it that she really started to try to convert to Christianity. So the parents were sort of not happy with it, that, how is that going to happen? You have a person in the family that is adopting a different religious thought. So they thought that I am the teacher of Vedanta and Hinduism. So they sent her to stay with us for 1 week. I remember this. This is a long time ago, 30 years ago. And I thought it was an interesting challenge to talk to this. I think she must have been, 17, 18 at that time, to try to reason to her to how to stay with Hinduism. And at the end of that, I got some insights as to why she was so serious about Christianity. And that insight that I saw was that when she would go to a church, she would have a very pleasant experience. But it was an experience. Experience meaning that it was something that she felt very strongly that I love this. This is very peaceful. And I started to really think about it. The whole atmosphere in a church where it is very, very peaceful. And there is in fact an organ playing. And then the mind focuses. And certain talks are given, linking it to certain ideas about accepting Christ in this particular case, etc., etc. And I could see that this youngster had an inner experience which was very pleasant. And you contrast it to a person who's not a devotee of a particular god in Hinduism. You just go to the temple, and it is so noisy, semi-dirty, and you don't get that inner experience of peace and quiet. And so she had both experiences, and she said, this is what I like. So this is what I say, that the philosophy. Now, the question is religiosity a science or a philosophy? And the inner experience was also philosophical. Why is it philosophical? Because it is not exactly repeatable. It's very possible that the same person that may go to the church later may not feel peaceful, because not because the church is any different, but because your mind is different. You are upset about something. So it's very possible that every time you go to the church, you don't have the same experience. So that is not a science. Then furthermore, the inner experience of feeling good in going to a church, is it forever? No. The moment you come out, then you get into the conflicts of life, let alone the future after this body falls. Who is to say? Obviously you're given some assurances that if you lead a good life, then you will be united with your Maker. But it's a speculation. There's no proof to it. There's a certain amount of faith. So this combination of non-repeatability, variability, doubt, non-verifiable belief, and all of faith, uncertainty about what happens after we die, all of those could be called a philosophy. And everybody then has a philosophy. So the Hindus have a certain philosophy. The Christians have a certain philosophy. The Jewish people have a certain philosophy. The Buddhism has a philosophy. All of those kinds of things, they have their own philosophical underpinnings. But one thing is common, that it is not science. So this is the distinction between philosophy and science. Now let's go to Vedanta. We need to really understand the uniqueness. You can call it something which is, and I'm not saying that it's uniqueness in terms of it is uniqueness. I mean, there's no point in that. Something very distinct, something distinct. So let's talk about that. So here, what Vedanta says is that indeed the underpinning of the life is in terms of an experience, no doubt about it. And this experience is created by the Maya Shakti. There's a certain power that all of us have. And I think it is important to see that this is one of the issues, one problems we have is that as soon as you uttered the word Maya, it seems like it is Ishvara's, something to do with Ishvara, nothing to do with me. And this is not right. Each one of us is a manifestation of the Maya Shakti. So now what Vedanta says is, yes, if you're talking about inner experience, peacefulness, sense of belonging, all of those kinds of things that we just talked about in all the religions, it is there, no doubt about it. But underneath all the experiences of life is science. So, science, just the way we've defined science, not any different. In fact, slightly different. How is it slightly different? Because if we look at our worldly science, like 100 degrees temperature, boiling water, this is experiential science. That science is not really total science. It is relative science. And relative science, kind of like a secondary science, is not the real science. How is it not the real science? What is secondary about it? It's because, as we know very much, that, and then I think the more recent scientific inquiry is grappling with this distinction between experiential science and the real science, if I may coin those words. They're also grappling with it. How? Because in the worldly science, what happens is you observe something. Like in this case, water boiling at 100 degrees. You're observing it. So, and the observation is, if it is repeatable, and this is Ishvara's creation. You and I did not decide what temperature the water should boil. This is Ishvara's creation. And Ishvara's creation cannot be, It cannot be dismissed. You cannot, there's no Russian science and American science and Indian science. There's science. But in the observation of the 100-degree temperature boiling of the water, it is dependent. It is not independent. Dependent means what? It becomes a observer-observed distinction. The observed is dependent on the observer. You cannot call it pure science. And even now, as I was mentioning, you find that science, the scientific inquiries, is grappling on this fact that we've been only analyzing the observed. We haven't really gotten into the observer. What is the relationship between them? So it is just empirical science, secondary science. It is not the real science. And there are people who are like, for example, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And they're beginning to really ask questions. And the current thinking is that it's very interesting that the observed does not behave the same way always. Sometimes it's a particle and sometimes it's a wave. And when does the wave become a particle and vice versa is not sure. But it just something is going on. So therefore also we can now conclude that if you are particular about defining science, there's something which is constant, not dependent on anything, no conditionality, unconditional. This is what we call Sat, which is never a Sat. Then underlying all the experiences of your life, all the experiences of your life, yes, which appears to be a philosophy, there is a science underneath of that. And not only there is science, there is in fact pure science, not conditional science, not secondary science, not empirical science. It is total, unconditional, pure science. Therefore, Vedanta says that please understand that really all of the religious thoughts that we have, yes, indeed, can be called as philosophy. But Vedanta, the purity of the understanding of Vedanta is not philosophy, it is science. You know, it's interesting. I'll just give you one quick example. Let me ask you a question. Are you a philosophy? Just ask yourself, am I a philosophy? Does that make any sense? I am a fact. I'm not a philosophy. I'm not speculation. Now, what is going to happen to me is a philosophy. what do I consist of until I completely understand it is a philosophy. Why am I what I am is a philosophy. But that I am is not philosophy. That's you, a fact. I remember in studying with Swami Dayanandji, this was made very, very clear to such an extent that he would never call Vedanta as a philosophy. Never. And I must say, this became very natural to me. To me as a person, as a student, as a teacher. I never call Vedanta as philosophy. Unlike many other people who actually call it philosophy. And I can understand that. Because sometimes even some very respected teachers in our own parampara, I also see them saying the philosophy of Vedanta. And I think that it is not that they don't know, but they deliberately don't want to confuse people, so they just call it philosophy. Swamiji, Swami Dayanandji would never do that. He says, words are very important. Words create thoughts, and thoughts are important for understanding. Do not ever think of Vedanta as a philosophy. So now, let's go forward. And I want to connect it to what we have been studying. As I mentioned it to you, I'm not coming up with something brand new. I'm just giving you certain ways of looking at the same thing. So we'll continue with that. All right. Let us consider how the facts of life that we experience are explained. Okay? So what happens is, there is an observation. There are various observations of various facts. We postulate the truth behind those observations. We draw certain inferences from it, and we provide the proof of the postulation. So, for example, let's take the example of black smoke and fire. So there, what we find is that white smoke may be originating with fire or may not be originating with fire. Just the heat can create white effervescence, smoke. You cannot call it smoke. But if you have black smoke, there is always fire. You cannot have a burning with fire that creates white smoke. You cannot have that. So now, if you're a youngster, a 5-year-old, You don't know this postulation because, the children can see black smoke, they can say white smoke, but this connection between fire and black smoke is not known to them. But it can be easily explained. In the science project at some sixth, fourth grade or fifth grade, even any, I don't remember which grade the child can grasp it, you can do this experiment very quickly. And from that point on, the child understands, okay, it is a connection which is invariable. Done. Okay. All right, now let us apply it to the Vedic Shastra. So this is the part we have to really think about. Because in what happens is that if the child that has understood this combination, connection between black smoke and fire, you don't need to see fire to infer that there is fire. You just see a black smoke somewhere, and immediately even a youngster who has understood this can say, oh, gosh, something is on fire. As it happens, you're driving, all of a sudden you see a black smoke. You don't need to be a 20-year-old to do this. Even a 7-year-old who has understood it can tell that. So that is an understanding. It's a part of the science of understanding. All right, let's go to Vedanta. In the Vedic Shastra, it says, please see the following postulate. This is important to see. It says, whenever there is some limitation, underlying that limitation is non-limitation. So in that sense, an experience of limitation is like black smoke. And the invitation to inquire about the underlying non-limitation which gives rise to limitation is like fire. Limitation is like black smoke and non-limitation is like fire. So just like a youngster has to be told this, has to be shown this repeatedly until it becomes very clear. After that, there is not necessary to consult the book. As soon as you see the black smoke, you say, there's fire. Very similar to that is the teaching in Vedanta that whenever you have an experience of limitation, you cannot have an experience of limitation without you being non-limited. This is what Vedanta says. This, as a student, I have to understand. It is not experience, it is understanding. And I say, I don't see that. All I see is a series of limitations, series of, it's kind of like seeing various waves. All I see is change, waves. Vedanta says, listen, in all areas, whenever there is some form, it is based on formless. Whenever you have waves in the water, there is water which is formless, relatively speaking. Even water has certain forms, but in this example, relatively speaking, that whenever you have limited waves with forms, with the beginning and an end and dancing and so on, underneath that, it has to depend on water. Similarly, if you look at any of the 5 major elements, Akasha, beautiful example, that whenever you see a formful Akasha, there is really is a very lovely example that, so when you have a Akasha within a tumbler, so this is called space. But, just like if you go traveling and we say, please just have a carry-on. And the person says, no, like my carry-on, I've got too many clothes, I cannot, there's no space for my clothes. So there's a definition of limited space. Is there a real limited space? Does it have any reality? No. Because the formless space is the basis of formful space. And this happens in all of the manifestations. Like, for example, you have life in a human being or any other living being, not just human being. Prana. What prana is nothing but the vayu, the air. Beautiful creation. You cannot have prana in deep space. But whenever there's oxygen, there is air, there is prana. And so inside the body it becomes prana, outside becomes vayu. Vayu is the very basis. Formless vayu becomes the basis of the individual pranas. Same thing. Same thing with fire. Whether you have Jatara Agni inside your tummy that cooks the food. There's this is so interesting. From time to time, these old philosophies come in. One should eat only non-cooked vegetables. Only non-cooked vegetables. Do not eat any cooked vegetables. This is idiotic, totally idiotic. You can eat some if you want to, but it's okay to eat. In fact, it is better to eat cooked food. Why? Because if you eat only non-cooked vegetables, somebody has to cook it for you. You cannot live on non-cooked food. Who does it? Jatara Agni, the fire in your tummy. That is also fire. If you burn this wood, that is also fire. So these are all limited fires, but underneath of that is an unlimited fire. So we say postulation that any limitation is based on non-limitation. Any form of a limitation is based on formless basis. So you know what that means. If I feel limited in my life, and really speaking, our lives is nothing but a stream of limitations. Every moment, every experience is limited. I'm small, I'm sad, I cannot do this, what am I going to do? I'm only here, I cannot see. Limitation. You know what that means? It means underneath that limitation there is some truth that you have not looked into. Every limitation should be an invitation for inquiry. So now we can connect it to the example that we saw in the last week. Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakaya. This is what Mandukya Upanishad very clearly states. It says, listen. And as we saw through our question answers, these are not two birds. It is the same bird having two separate experiences. One is the experience of limitation, and the other one on inquiry is if you can call it an experience of totality, non-limitation, purnatvam, lacking nothing, advaita. This needs to be looked into, because the postulation cannot be violated. Just like the black smoke and the fire cannot be violated. You cannot pretend, I'll prove it. I'll create a black smoke without fire. Not possible. Similarly, it is not possible for limitation to be isolated from non-limitation. It is in fact dependent on it. Really? And so the implication of that is just enormous. That all I am really focused on at this moment is my sense of limitation. And I should see that that's not possible without me being unlimited. But I don't quite understand what unlimitedness means. Fine, that's okay. But see, the facts cannot be violated. This is why we say that the sense of being a jiva, being a particular person, is a mistake. Because underneath that is Paramatma. And you're completely ignoring it. It's okay to say, I don't understand it. That's okay. That means that I need to inquire into it. So this is another very interesting thing. This is an important thing for us to see. Going back to the very uniqueness of Vedanta as a pure science, it's not speculation, it's not philosophy, it's not just experience alone, but the truth behind it, which is inviolable. Not inviolable, which cannot be violated. How? How is that possible? So this is a very important thing. Why? Because what you find is, and this is where I tell you a very systematic study of the Mandukya Upanishad and the Karika. Because what Gaudapadacharya ji is doing, please don't forget that Sri Gaudapadacharya is the Parama Guru of Adi Shankara, Guru's Guru. Not an ordinary person. Very clear lineage from Vyasa. So what he's saying is, think about it, guys. Think about it. You just don't keep on spending the rest of your life just having trivial experiences. See the underlying basis for it. And it says, just like the formulation of the postulation between dark smoke, black smoke, and fire, that has to be proven. It has to be demonstrated for someone to have any doubts, right? So I'm sure that there are experiments made in the school where this is shown. If somebody says, no, I'm not convinced of it, please show it to me. So then some back and forth comes up, and some experiments have to be constructed. And then finally, the end of that, he says, okay, I got it. Similarly, here is the situation. I only see myself as a limited person. As soon as I'm born, the very birth itself is like that of a crying baby that needs help. What kind of an estimation that a baby is going to have? It's a good thing that you do not have a self-estimation. It's very interesting to see this, how children grow, and they don't have any self-judgment in that sense. For example, we have a granddaughter who is going to be 5. And she's not shy of being naked. She doesn't have that sense that, I'm naked. The parents and grandparents are beginning to slowly teach Hey, you're naked. So she said, okay, I'm naked. So what? And pretty soon a self-estimation grows where the child says, oh my gosh, I cannot be naked. I have to cover myself. Unless you become a member of the nudist colony or you are in some aboriginal, what is the word? Aborigines in a village. People like to cover their private parts. But that sense of who you are and what you are, it comes slowly. Okay, now suppose the person says, listen, I'm born as a baby and I'm born as a limited person. They may not see themselves as a limited person, but their behavior, and as they grow up, their behavior remains the same, that I'm just a small person. And to tell that person, no, 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 no. You are underneath all limitation, you are unlimited, and so on. They'll say, what? Doesn't make any sense. How? How can I be unlimited? Show me. Where's the proof? There it is said. This is where the study of Mandukya, the seventh mantra, the Karikas, all of this thinking will say, no, 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 no. You are basically unlimited. You are overlaying a notion of limitation on the facts of non-limitation. So please, let me repeat that. What the Vedantic instruction, the teaching says is, your experience of limitation is a notion, not a fact. Just like you say this is an inadequate space, it's a notion. Space is factually unlimited. Only for a particular condition you can have a notion. I don't have enough space. I only have 2 bedrooms. I need 3 bedrooms. Notion. You know that. So that's what happens. That becomes a philosophy. You see, that becomes a philosophy. Because it's very possible that some people say even 1 bedroom is enough. Why do we need even 2? Another person, no, 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 we must have 3 bedrooms. It's a philosophy of your life. So I haven't completed my thought about the proof. Let me just go through and complete the thought about the proof. What I'm really looking at is, what I'm explaining is that the person says, I don't have an experience of non-limitation. Where is the proof? This is the uniqueness of Vedanta. I tell you, this is not normally understood or taught. One should see this very clearly as a point of distinction between the teaching of Vedanta as a science versus the experience of religiosity as a philosophy. This is the point I'm trying to make. So, in Vedanta it says, yes, there is a proof. What is the proof? There are two proofs. One is the dream experience. It's a proof, as we've been saying. This is something new, but this is not normally pointed out by teachers. It is Ishvara's proof. Ishvara says, my dear, I will not tell you something unless it is true. So what is the proof? That your sense of limitation can just go away just like that. And what you thought you were, you have some experience of the waking state and so on and so forth, it's all bunkum, just goes away. So you have a completely different experience. Then you can say, okay, I can see that, okay, I understand that. But I don't have the experience of non-duality. I don't have because you see what happens from a waking state of limitation as a limited person. I have the experience of a different limited person. But I don't have the experience of non-limitation. So Vedanta says, I'm happy that you asked that question. Good. You're a good student. Wonderful. Now let me tell you the second answer. Deep sleep. That is the proof. No, deep sleep means... All right. I don't know how to explain. It says, listen carefully. Ishvara has created a proof for you that you have to now. Your problem is you refuse to see the possibility of non-limitation. Because you know what our issue is? We want an experience of non-limitation in front of us. Arre Baba, you cannot do that. Why not? Because it will also be something which will, in front of you means what? Means that you will be separate from that sense of non-limitation. So the non-limitation has to be you. It's not an experience of something. So this has to be sorted out in my mind. So really speaking, the proof of the postulation has to be understood. And if you say, no, I can't accept it. Okay, fine, don't accept it. It's okay. You were the one who came to me. This is why the Vedic proselytizing does not help. Catching hold of somebody and saying, okay, you are free, does not help. I can tell you, I'm sure that all of us can have that. I've had some very close friends and relatives who I would wish to understand, including my own kids. You cannot. This is why, very beautifully in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, only when he says, okay, I am your Shishya, did Krishna agree to teach him? They were friends for 20 years, growing up together. Why didn't he ask him? Because he was not ready. So yeah, it has to be inquired into. It's not a trivial thing to discover non-limitation as the essence of limitation. And so then, so this is the proof that has to be given. It is given, something that I have to inquire into, and that leads to a total original science, not philosophy. Philosophy is an experience. The science is the underlying facts behind the experience. The underlying facts are that Paramatma, which is also Atma, which is called Brahman, which is called Ishvara, is nothing but Satyam Jnanam Anantam. It is the same, it is the Sakshi. Sakshat Karanam Vina Ikshate, it is Sakshi. So yes, the Jivatma also sees. See, this is a very beautiful example that we took up last week. If I can just summarize it, revise it for you. That the same person behaves as a Jivatma because I see things with the help of upadhis only. It is like, you put your glasses on. So you see things, but you see it through the help of a karanam, an instrument. So the question is, do you always need a karanam to see? As a Jivatma, yes. Because as a Jivatma, I see through my sense organs. I hear, I see, I touch, I smell. Yes, always through Karanam, through my mind, through my buddhi, Karanam. But that is a regular Jivatma. But do I always have to be a Jivatma? No. Why? Because that is a secondary seeing. It is like an appliance. But the primary seeing, the original seeing, the Paramatma, I don't need any upadhis. I see the upadhi also. This is why the very first verse of Drikdrishya Viveka, Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drik Tad Drishyam Driktu Manasam Drishyaha Dhi Mrityaya Sakshi Drigeva Natu Drishyate. That Sakshi, you don't need the upadhi. You may see it through the upadhi if you want, as a Jivatma, but as a Paramatma, you don't need the upadhi. You just see, in fact, you see the body. So, for example, as a dream, in a dream, I see as a dream character, right? I'm a dreamer. That dreamer, the dream person, is not the real person. Because the real person is one that doesn't need to see through the dream. So here, it's interesting. We can go back to the other example that we gave last week, which is that of you're seeing something as an abhimani. This is a very, very important, very useful way of thinking, understanding. This is very beautiful, really. As an abhimani, as an identifier. So, Jivatma is an identifier. I'm identifying with this particular sense of my body-mind. Why only this body-mind? Because that is what my karmas, I asked for it. I asked to be somebody. So now I see through me as a person. This is Jivatma, as an Abhimani. And within Abhimani, now I have the Abhimana. I am here, this is my house, this is my room, this is my spouse, this is my children. This is my Abhimani. This is an experience. And a very good way to see the working of an Abhimana is that for movie goings, as we saw. So in the movie going, I choose to be an Abhimani. And I go in and I get absorbed. I lose my original identity and acquire a temporary identity which is totally different, which is based on what I'm seeing, right? And you know, this is interesting. We were talking about the distinction between philosophy and science, right? This is how we started. Let us look at the experience of movie going also in terms of philosophy and science for a minute. Let's look at that. So what happens is, we go to see different kinds of movies. Now, what kind of movies do you like to go to? Some people will say, you know, my life is kind of tough. I don't want to go see a serious movie. So I see all these science fiction movies, Jurassic Park, and, 2001 movie, and all these, animated movies. That gives me a lot of fun. I really like that. You know what? Let me just say this. This is your philosophy. Your philosophy is to see science fiction movies, fun movies. There could be others who could say, oh, no, this is dumb. I don't want to see science fiction movies. I want to see some real serious social causes. There's so much stuff going on. Historical issues. That is your philosophy. In both cases, however, it is possible that you may elect to give up your philosophical experience and regain the fact of who you are, isn't it? You can do that. All you have to do is to just disengage, close your eyes, take out your cell phone, whatever, think about yourself, and it's gone. So in that sense, you see, I'm just giving you relatively, your identification, your experience is philosophical. Whereas underneath that, you have a certain fact, which is a science, relatively speaking, because you have a certain standing in life, how old are you, and how much, money you have, all those kinds of things. That's for you, how educated you are. You could be a very educated scientist, and yet you are taking on a philosophical experience just for a short time. Then you can release it and you go back to your originality. So the only difference is, interestingly enough, as we've already talked about it, that apart from the movie experience where the giving up of the philosophical experience and going back to your own was something that you were used to. You already are before you go to the movie, and you can regain it. Whereas in understanding the basis of your philosophy, you don't know it yet. You see the difference? In the case of the movie, you go back to a factual, what we call science, easily. Whereas in the other case, you don't know it, so you cannot go back to it until it is pointed. Not that it's not there. It has never been pointed out to you. But it remains the same thing. Once we understand who we really are, that becomes not a relative science, but a pure science. So therefore we can say, really speaking, please understand this, that Vedanta is totally scientific. It is science, not a philosophy. So much so that it's even the empirical science is also very relative and changing, is not as pure, not as factual, not as permanent, not as useful as the science pointed out by Vedanta. So I thought that these explanations of the Karika in terms of the various experiences, because that's what it was saying, the various Jagrata Avastha, Swapna Avastha, Sushupti Avastha, is framed under a discussion of science versus philosophy. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityunjaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Karika. All right, very good. Happy to see you be here. Hopefully, we'll see you next week.